Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us, we have Daniel Newman. He's the CEO of Futurum, and we're going to discuss how CEOs and corporate management teams are digesting this new AI climate world that we live in, whether it's new or not, but the horse has been let out of the barn and everyone's talking about it now. Daniel, it's great to see you. As always, welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get to the AI climate, I want to talk about tech earnings first. Of course, we are in the thick of it this week. Even today after the close, we have all these earnings that are coming out. Yep. What are some of the top of mind things you are focusing on as it relates to earnings?
I think I'm watching to see how the reset that's happened over the last few quarters is, showing up in the current results. We saw Alphabet and we saw Microsoft come out with pretty strong beats, and we saw the street really appreciate that. Big gains after the bell for both of them. And then we saw Meta had a really strong quarter. And again, it's showing that they are really appreciating kind of the austerity, the operationalizing and cutting that's going on right now. And while that's a little bit tough to digest with all of the AI that we'll be talking about, companies have to be looking at how much they're spending, how much they're hiring, how much they're investing. And in the street, the investors, before they're going to come back into riskier tech stocks, they're going to want to see companies that are being efficient and they're driving productivity and driving profits.
Well, let's talk about that, AI demand and innovation. I'm sure you go through the earnings calls, and there's always that key word that sticks out. ESG was one of the words last year. Mm-hmm. Blockchain is something that's always in there. I would imagine AI has been just in at least 100 times in just one call.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that, listen to Jensen Huang on NVIDIA. He'll probably say it no less than 50 times in a call. But when all the companies I just named, every single one of them is making massive bets on AI. And while things like cloud growth is decelerating a little bit, we saw it in the 20-something%. We're going to see Amazon today after the bell with AWS, such a huge component of their numbers. What we are seeing is the companies are starting to come out with their stories. Yesterday I talked to Bill McDermott, CEO of ServiceNow, head of him reporting, and he was talking. If you listen to him, it's all thematic to these very practical applications of AI to the future where generative AI is going to completely change not only our businesses, but the way software and applications are consumed. And you can't help but just say, wow, this is going to get really interesting.
Are CIOs planning for widespread deployment yet? Has it been in the works, or is everyone scrambling to figure out how this is going to fit into their businesses, not only from a storytelling perspective, but then you have to execute on that?
Yeah, the research that we're doing and other research that's being published across the network these days is looking at anywhere from 50 to 60% of operations being AI driven by 2025. And actually, when I was talking to Bill yesterday, he threw out a stat to me that really kind of blew my mind. And he said, something about 60% of CEOs of the Fortune 1000, I think was the number he used, think that their business model is going to be outdated within the next decade. Meaning that companies that are big, stable, robust organizations, the leaders are going, I don't know if our business model is going to be relevant. And I think it's generative AI that's creating that change.
Counterpoint to that is, I was speaking with someone, it was last year, and they were saying that we just don't have the skill set for corporate management teams' goals in 25, 2030. So I'm wondering if they're looking at these, if they're looking at it as a way to replace skill sets that just might not be available in time to execute on those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. When I wrote the book Human Machine, this is something we were looking at a few years ago, and we were looking at the augmentation. And then, we're sort of augmentation versus displacement. Is this going to be something that drives skills forward? We heard so many companies during 2020 and 2021 when when we were at a shortage of employees, they were talking about upskilling workers. Well, AI is going to force even people in very senior roles, knowledge workers with, you look at the legal field, you look at the medical field. Are doctors going to be doing surgery, or are robots going to be doing surgery? So you look at every single field out there, AI is going to either push us to become more capable and drive levels of empathy, things that machines can't do, or we're going to have a real problem about how we keep people busy and keep people employed. Because I'm using the tools. I don't know about you, Jill, but right. I've been using Bard and I've been using ChatGPT. I've seen a PowerPoint created out of 10 bullet points that somebody put into a Word doc, and it generated a really decent looking PowerPoint. Give it a few years, keep training it. This is going to be pretty remarkable stuff.
Oh my gosh, there's so many questions here. When it comes to the medical field, I still feel like I'm a late Gen Xer here. I think I might want to have my medical plan a little bit more personalized than ChatGPT pushing it out. I think I'd want to have a personal relationship. I mean, even when you think about your attorney, your accountant, and so forth, sometimes you have to go through the grunt work to break yourself into the profession. And kind of have to know what's underneath behind the curtain.
I think it's and. I think it's and because if you
Right.
look at the service we get in the medical field for what we spend on healthcare, it isn't particularly great. But we do get that comfort that comes from the doctor walking in, someone that we know has spent a lot of time studying to know something specifically about what's going on in our lives. But think about like the era of the Google doctor and all the people that are kind of doing their own searching and learning how proprietary data that could be secure, private, and accessible. You log into a portal that's GPT based and you can ask questions about your condition, and it can actually use anonymized and specific data that's HIPAA compliant, or that's whatever that compliance becomes in the future, and it can tell you and give you immediacy. Because I don't know about you, but when you're concerned about a health condition and you're going to wait 6 weeks or 3 months to go in and see a specialist, it'd be great to know that. Because Google, that's a pretty daunting path to go down and start searching conditions on Google. If you had that real medical data that sits inside of Epic and Cerner, and they found a way to use a GPT to take that proprietary data, that could be really powerful.
Well, I mean, look how much we used teledoc during the pandemic, right? I guess it's kind of the same premise. I think I'd prefer to see my doctor, but now we got used to going to teledoc. If you kind of know what it is and the symptoms are consistent, whether it's the flu or you need an antibiotic, or at least you can kind of get immediate attention versus having to wait 2-3 days to get into the doctor's office, especially when you're not feeling well and you just need an antibiotic or whatever it is.
Yeah, we're in the now economy,
Right.
and you can take this back from medical all the way to things like getting customer service on Amazon. When we want to know where our package is, we don't really want to talk to someone in a call center. We would be more than happy to talk to a bot. The bots up to this point have been limited in their sophistication. A lot of times we're very quickly, or when you call into something, you got to go through the menu to get to your credit card. Like, why can't you log into your portal of your credit card company and ask questions like, is this a fraudulent thing? And they can answer, and you can actually have an engaging interaction, because GPT could instantly source all that data and give you a much more engaging back and forth conversation. Or where's the dog food that I ordered? Why did it not get delivered? Going through and trying to get a call center to take care of you. The data's there, the interaction's there. We don't want to talk to somebody. We want immediacy in our answers. Now, the doctor example, maybe we want to talk to somebody. But in most things every day, we just want immediacy in data and information. And of course, we want it to be accurate. And that's probably the biggest thing is trust.
Right.
With all this, how fast it's moving is, can we trust the data, or is it quote unquote usefully wrong? And that's problematic.
But I also think, to your point earlier, it's going to be an and thing. If you think about it from a marketing communications lens, we're going to write out a press release. There's kind of standard, legal language at the bottom, and on, what's today? April 25th, 2023, blah 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 blah, happened fine. But then there's that voice that comes from the company that's very distinct. It's their vibe, and I think Marcoms is still going to want to have that input there.
Absolutely. Well, I think the proprietary data is going to be the catalyst and the differentiator. We're looking at the open internet right now and all this data that everybody has access to. So at some point, these kind of chat GPTs and BARDs, they become somewhat table stakes. And then for the enterprises, it comes down to all that medical data, all that data that might be inside of a manufacturing or inside an ERP system or your Oracle system that's going to uniquely enable you to actually have that next level of interaction with somebody. It's not going to be this open internet data. It's actually that there's millions and millions of zettabytes of data that's being created. We're going to constantly create it. I'm writing research now by literally dictating my thoughts about something that maybe an earnings report. And I'll dictate, then I'll throw it into Bard. And then I'll have Bard give me, and then I'll have GPT do the same thing, and it'll synthesize it, and then it will add a table with some stats and data points. And now it took something that maybe would have taken me 2 hours to do in the past, and it's made it 10 minutes.
Well, I mean, in full transparency, sometimes we'll have companies that come on the show, smaller biotechs or more complex cyber companies, where I just don't have that level of understanding.
Yeah.
And I've tried it, and I'm like, okay, this is much easier than reading their FAQ page because I have no idea what half the terms mean. So it does make sense, and I think there certainly is practical application for that. Of course, the other side, of the token is, what's the input like? And you think about conscious, unconscious bias. You think about ethics in AI. You think about responsible AI. I mean, think about the Web 2.0 world. We fight about content moderation, and everything's polarized these days. Are we going to start fighting about what generative AI looks like based on inputs?
I mean, I think we kind of have to.
Right.
I think there's a lot of legal battles to be fought yet. I think there's a lot of policy issues. We know policymakers aren't going to be able to keep up with the speed of Silicon Valley and the speed of global innovation around tech. I mean, a year ago, ChatGPT wasn't even in our vernacular. We weren't even talking about it. And now we have just about every major tech company on the planet, not to mention all of the other big listed companies in Nasdaq and the Fortune 1000 around the world. They're all talking right now about how generative AI is going to change their business. That happened in a year, but you've got, who owns the data? You've got issues of, search used to be very attributable. Where did I click? And how do you give credit to the search and the advertising model? How do you give a model when it's all consolidated, and it's just an abstract and it's taken thousands of different sources? And how do they prioritize what source it took? And what about famous, people and celebrities? We had a little, conversation about that backstage. And, there's a lot of data, and, you can take 5 seconds of this clip and then start a Jill deepfake, and they could make videos of you. And all they need is 5 seconds of your voice. And, how do we attribute that? If they change your voice just a little bit, is it no longer you? If they change your face just a little bit? I mean, we've got big policy and legal issues that we're going to have to be looking at in the very near future, and I'm worried that we can move fast enough to actually keep up with it.
I know. Just don't tell my producers that, because I need a job. Anyway, Daniel, great to catch up with you as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.